Hi everyone. As a beginning pianist, it can often be really hard to know what are the pieces that I can actually play. What's some music that I can work on that's going to be appropriate to my level? Now, everybody starting out on the piano wants to learn the Moonlight Sonata and Clair de Lune and so on and so forth. And that's great. Those pieces are beautiful, but they're not for beginners. And if you try and tackle them too early, you're going to end up frustrated. You're going to give up piano. And we don't want that. We want you to have lots of success. We want you to enjoy playing. And so, of course, it's important to move step by step. And so in this video, I want to point out 5 pieces that you can play as a beginner, and I mean within your first 6 months or so of playing. These are great pieces, they're not too hard, and I'll talk about each one a little bit, and I'll also leave a link to where you can find the pieces in the description of this video. Now I'm going to go in order from easiest to hardest, and the pieces at the end are actually the ones that are most well known by the greatest composers, so be sure to watch all the way to the end. We'll get to that. So the first piece that I would recommend to a beginning pianist just starting out is a piece by a composer named Cornelius Gurlitt. He wrote a lot of music for beginners, and they're great little pieces. They're not too hard to play. Let's listen to it first. And so on. Okay, so the great thing about this piece, number one, it's in C major, so you don't have to worry about any sharps or flats. It has only half notes and whole notes, which makes it, from a rhythmic perspective, quite easy. And another thing that's really great about this is that both hands are in treble clef. You don't have to worry about reading treble and bass clef at the same time. That can be really overwhelming for a lot of beginners. Now, the second piece that I would recommend for absolute beginners is by a composer named Louis Köhler. This piece is in 3/4 time, so it's a little different than the last one, which is in 4/4 time, but like the last piece, both hands are in treble clef. So that will also make it easier when you're starting out to read, to not have to read the bass clef at the same time. This piece has a beautiful melody with legato slurs over the top, and so it's a great way to start working on that all-important legato sound, which is incredibly important for beginners at the piano. Now, before we continue on to the third piece, I want to mention, if you're like a lot of pianists and you feel frustrated learning piano via YouTube because you don't know what you need to know and in what order you need to know it, I would recommend checking out my piano course, petersonpianoacademy.com, where you'll find everything presented to you in a very logical, step-by-step manner, and you'll find tutorials on all 5 pieces that we cover today in this video. Now, this third piece is by a composer named Theodor Osten. He wrote a lot of great music for beginning pianists and really charming tunes that I really love. I recommend them to a lot of beginning piano students. This particular one, called The Flatterer, is in 3/4 time. It's sort of like a waltz. And one of the things interesting about this piece is that you do have treble and bass clef. So it's a little bit trickier than the last two because you have to read both clefs at the same time. And also in the left hand, you have multiple notes at the same time in the same hand, which is, of course, a really important skill. Moving on to piece number 4. This one is by a composer that everybody knows, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. It's a piece that he wrote when he was very, very young, and a child still, in fact, maybe 6 or 7. It's called the Minuet in F major. And the cool thing about this piece is that you can already see Mozart's genius in it, and you can play some great music even as an absolute beginner. Okay, so this one features a lot more shifting in the hand positions than the previous pieces, which is a great skill to develop because, of course, in real piano music, you don't stay in one position all the time. You move around a lot more, and this piece will start to get you acquainted with that. It's not a terribly hard piece, but there is a flat in the key signature. You need to keep that in mind, and the two hands are quite independent. They do their own thing. So again, that's a great thing to start getting used to. On to the very final piece. So Johann Sebastian Bach was the first composer to write a collection of pieces in every single major and minor key. He called that the Well-Tempered Clavier. It's a collection of 24 preludes and 24 fugues. And this piece is the piece that opens up the entire cycle. It was a groundbreaking work in musical history, and it's absolutely brilliant. The easy thing about this piece, first of all, it's in the key of C major, so you don't have, at least in the beginning part of the piece, a lot of sharps and flats. The other thing that makes this really great is that the second half of every measure is identical to the first, and so that gives you some time to think ahead. It's also featuring a lot of broken chords, so you start to get used to reading notes not only as individual notes, but as groups of chords together. That's a really important skill that every professional pianist has. Another thing that makes this piece really wonderful from the perspective of a beginner is that you can practice the pedal with it. It has a very consistent pedal that you can use just by changing the pedal once every measure. And whether or not, some people say, you shouldn't use pedal in Bach. Regardless of that, I think if Bach had had a pedal on his instruments at that time, he probably would have used it. And this piece certainly lends itself very well to the use of pedal, an enormously important skill to develop as a beginning or intermediate pianist. So those are 5 pieces that I would really recommend to beginners. If you have other ideas, pieces you've loved to play as a beginner, let me know in the comments section. Please like, subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.